So, B'siyata Shema, we jump back into Torah Hey. And if you remember last time, very briefly, we were learning that in order for a person to be able to have the simcha that's necessary for them to be able to sense whether something is koidim gzar din or la'achar gzar din, in order for a person to know whether they have to daven, like the Rebbe said, while the tefillah is nislabish b'maimer, putting the tefillah inside of a maimer, of a Torah lesson or of a story, or whether they can daven straight, whether it's before the gzar din or la'achar gzar din, said the Rebbe, a person needs tremendous simcha and mitzvahs, so that in the simcha, the person in Yismach Yisrael ba'osav can intermingle with Yismach Hashem b'masav, and to the degree that the tzaddik feels that there's something missing, there's a certain simcha missing, and the person gets to a place of absolute clarity where they know that it's not their own simcha that's missing, because subjectively they're okay, must be that something's lacking mitzad HaKadosh Baruch Hu b'chvod v'atzmai. In some sense, something is missing from Hashem's side of things, and in that sense, he knows that there's a gzar din coming to the world. HaKadosh Baruch Hu would rather be other ways, but ultimately, like we're learning, we have bechira and it's in our hands. And so there's going to be a certain lack of joy on the part of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And when a person who's serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu is serving Hashem and doing the mitzvahs only for the sake, on the level of the nevuah of Moshe Rabbeinu Zeh, where he sees Olam Haba not in some futuristic way, Koyamar Hashem, but Zeh through what Rebbe Nachman called an Aspaklar Me'ira, that's an aspect of nevuah. Because Navi is Rosh Tevis, Yavai Verina Noise Alumaisa. That's an aspect of a person who, after planting and after putting in all the work, right? That's the aspect of coming back and bringing the schar. So that's a Navi Baspaklar Me'ira. He sees HaKadosh Baruch Hu in the mitzvah. Schar mitzvah is the mitzvah itself, and the opportunity to do another mitzvah for tzavsa, for the purpose of connecting to Hashem. Such a person who's serving God in such a way is going to be able to tell whether it's kodim gzar din or la'achar gzar din. However, in order to have that simcha, says the Rebbe, and we'll start again from Ois Gimel, v'ikra simcha hu balev. The primary joy is in the heart. You have placed joy in my heart. The way to be joyous is once a person has removed all akmimias, all sort of crookedness, like akum, something that's distorted, that's corrupted within the heart, that a person should have a very simple, straightforward, clean, pure, undiluted heart. Then says the Rebbe, then you'll be meriting to experience joy, because joy is a very natural state. Children are joyous, right? That's their consistent state. They might throw a fit and a temper tantrum, but if you know how, to deal with that properly, you can guide them sort of right back to a natural, joyous state. That's the aspect of yashras, tmimas. Joy is natural for us. It's only that when we grow up, and then all of a sudden, different things start getting mixed into our motivations, and various much more complex ways of looking at the world, looking at ourselves, understanding who we are, what we're expected to do, what we're supposed to accomplish, and how we can get that by manipulating and all of a sudden we can't manage to feel joy anymore. And the question is, where am I going to find joy out there? And the answer is, you already have joy, and it's a matter more of getting things out of the way. We spoke Thursday night a little bit about the revealing the statue in the marble. It's about taking things away as opposed to adding more things. And so when a person gets to Yashras Halev, so how do we do that? Says the Rebbe, it's got to be through thunder. Thunder was only created to smooth out the creases of the heart. And then we said on a very simple level, this is the way that humanity used to respond to thunder. It was a metaphysical experience. And today, in our sophistication, which we're going to learn more about today, we look back at them and we say, "Shtus, it's just science. Get over it. It's nothing, right?" And we're the foolish ones, because the truth is they were absolutely right. It is just metaphysics. Is it science? Sure. Who told you that science isn't metaphysics? Right, and now today we're going to talk about this. Science is coming back. Science is not just doing tshuva in a certain way, where on the level of physics at least, there's a discovery of a whole new physics, of a whole new understanding of the world that's mamish happening very rapidly and being largely overlooked and ignored by the general culture, which we're going to get into as Hashem knows Dalit. But ultimately, there's a complete shift in understanding that really everything is energy, right? And everything is interconnected on the quantum physics level. And Newtonian physics that worked for larger bodies of mass absolutely break down on a micro quantum level, and all of a sudden everything's different. And it's all about mystery, and it's all about uncertainty, and it's a huge tikkun for science in that realm to discover that we didn't actually know what we were talking about when we thought that we had the whole thing figured out. We have nothing figured out. And not only do we have nothing figured out, it actually led to a materialist, reductionist, philosophical approach to the world that led to us having the illusion that if we could just control, that we could control things and manipulate things once we figured out all the laws, and then we'd create paradise for ourselves and we have no need for God. And it's led, obviously, to the most incredible mental health crisis ever in history. We're sadder and more depressed and more anxious than we ever were before. And so who is naive and who is childish? Unbelievable. Says the Rebbe, Ra'amim used to be mefashi, takmim shabalev. Ra'amim b'chinas kol. Says the Rebbe, you don't have to wait to hear thunder. You can create thunder. You be the thunder. Because thunder is just the aspect of a loud voice, of a loud sound. That we have the ability to make this sound when we daven. And this is producing thunder. It's brought in the Zohar Kodesh. When a kala is heard, when a big, huge sound is heard, and the ground becomes wet by the Avi Mitra, by the clouds of rain, the rain clouds that are pouring forth rain that's coming down to the ara, to the ground. Ishtama kala lebriyasa. The people hear this sound, v'da'inun ra'amin, and that produces thunder. That sound produces thunder, and that's what the Zohar Kodesh says in Parshas Pinchas.
What does ve'ara mean?
What's that?
When a voice comes out, ve'ara
Ve'ara ba'avi mitra, I think it's that the ground, yeah?
No, it's not ve'ara.
No? What is it?
It's the rain clouds.
No.
And in ve'ara, I'm sorry, ve'ara, and it inspires, it hits, it reaches, it bumps into the avi mitra. Yes, so from that, thank you. Ishtama kala lebriyasa. People hear and v'da'in and ra'aman, and that's thunder. Ve'ikar ra'amim he megvuros. But it has to come from a place of gevura, kamashikasav ra'am gevuraisav miyas bainan. And the thunder of his gevura miyas bainan. Who can contemplate that? It's overwhelming. And so you see that there's a connection in that pasuk between ra'am, which is thunder, and gevuraisav, which is the aspect of gevura. That's a response to thunder, and we make that bracha, we make reference to gevura as well. So says the Rebbe, if we already said, yeah. So you're saying gevura is connected to tehillah. Yes, beautiful. Yes, right. So. Second. So once the Rebbe said that thunder is the aspect of kol, and the kol of thunder comes out from gevura, so it's not just any voice in tefillah, it's a stark, it's a loud voice, it's a gevura deka kol, right? And that's the aspect of thunder. Gevura semachinas koyach ugevura, koyach ugevura, right? There's the aspect of koyach, sha'adam moitzi es hakol b'koyach gadol, that a person in davening lets out a koyach gadol, a loud cry. Have you ever heard the way that the Karlin Hasidim, by the Kotel or anywhere, shouting? It's like a pella that they have any voice left when they're like 11 years old. They're already shouting for years. Kol gadol. V'hakol hu pogea ba'avi mitra. So that kol is pogea, bumps into the avi mitra, to these rain clouds. And those rain clouds, says the Rebbe, this is the aspect of your mind. Shamisham yardin tipin. Because from that place, within the human physiology, the brain, the head, is the aspect of shamayim, and the heart is the aspect of aretz, right? Or the midas are the aspect of aretz, the head and the heart, the brain, and the rest of the body. So that voice goes into the ears. It's all very deep Kabbalah because everything is mamish Kabbalah. But the voice comes out of the mouth and enters into the ears. And through that, it bumps into the Ave Mitra, to the rain clouds, which the Rebbe says that's the aspect Bechinas Moichin, of the brain. Shemisham Yardin Tipin Tipin. And just like Shemayim lets out rain that falls down to the ground, so too the brain lets out drops of thinking that comes down into the body. A living wellspring of water, min Lebanon, that drips down, min Lebanon, from Lebanon. Says the Zohar Kadosh, this is a reference to the brain, min libuna demoicha, from the white matter of the brain. So there's water that drips down from that place. Ukishapagaba of a mitra, when a person lets out that kol with gevura, and it rises up into the ears, and it's pagaba of a mitra, and it shakes the brain a little bit. This produces a loud sound. This is the aspect of thunder. V'zehu, and this is where we pick up from last time. V'zehu kol ramcha b'galgal. We say that we hear Ramcha, we hear Kadosh Baruch Hu's voice, Begalgal, says the Zohar Kadosh, Hainu Begalgalta Demoicha. Galgal is like a skull, right? A Geulah, right? There's the Kol Ramcha Begalgal. You can produce the Kol of Ram, of thunder, in your Galgal, in your brain. Kad Ara Begalgalta Demoicha. When it bumps into and encounters the Galgala Demoicha, Nasa Mikol Ra'amim, V'nishba L'Briyosav. And then it's able to be heard by other people. And the Rebbe is about to say that on the one hand, it's heard by you yourself, right? Meaning you yourself get awoken from this. As Chazal says about the brain, the Gemara in Brachas, that kol ma'oyer kavana, right? So it's a Chazal. Everything he's saying is very abstract, but this is what Chazal say, right? That kol is ma'oyer kavana, because there's a kesher between kavana, which is the avi mitra of the Galgalta, and the kol, which is the Ram. The Rebbe is just building a whole structure around it. But the Rebbe is about to tell us that not only will you hear the Ram, that will enable other people to be mekabel from you. Other people will also not just hear the Ram of your own kol in tefillah, that's also true, but the Rebbe is going to say that will give the person the capacity to say words that are mekubal by people, as we're going to see. Says the Rebbe, "V'zeh pi yedaber chachmais." This is the aspect of the pasuk that says, P, my mouth, Yedaber Chachmas, will speak Chachmas, wisdom. Says the Rebbe, right there is a reference to this whole process of the voice that comes out of the mouth, P Yedaber Chachmas. It goes into the Galgalta, it goes up to the Chochmah, it goes up to the Adi Mitra, it goes up to the brain. And such the end of the pasuk, v'hagas libi tfunas. That has an impact immediately on my heart. My heart will speak wise things, because in order for the akmimia shebe lave to be wrinkled out, we need to hear thunder. What's thunder? Says the Rebbe, kol ma'or kavana, kol ramcha begalgal, pi yedaber chachmas. All these psukim are just hinting to the very, very same pattern, and that ultimately leads, right? Libi tfunais. That's going to have an impact on a person's heart. A person will be woken up through this thunder, and the heart will be woken up. Kol ma'orer hakavana. I'm sorry, that brachas daf vav was a different daf. That's for some other source. Kol ma'orer kavana. But Chazal do say, and it's brought in halacha, that kol awakens the kavana. This is what the Gemara says in brachas daf vav amud beis. Mi sheyesh boy yira shemayim, which is the the ram is gvura, shakes a person up. So a person who has yira shamayim, devarav nishma'im, that person's words are accepted by other people. People will listen to such a person. Because we already said a person who has yira, when he has kol, it wakes up the thunder. Ki ra'am misitra di Yitzchak. Because ra'am, right, sorry for the fact that, I Akedas Yitzchak is connected to the ram that he brought, so ram is ram, but that's not really what he's saying. It's Ra'am, right? Ki Ra'am misitra Yitzchak. But thunder comes from the side of Yitzchak. Kamesh Kasav v'Ra'am Gevuraisav. Right? Like we already brought the pasuk, Ra'am, thunder is connected to Gevura. Val Yedeza Dvarav Nishma'im. And through that, your words are heard not only by yourself, but are able to be accepted by other people. The voice is heard by creatures. Because upon that depends the listening. Hashem shamati shim'acha yeresi. HaKadosh Baruch Hu shamati, I have heard. Shim'acha yeresi, I have feared your name. Says Rebbe Nachman, there's a kesher between Shim'acha yeresi, having Yiras Shamayim, and Shamati, and the concept of hearing, because also the faculty of listening is connected to Binah, whereas seeing is connected to Chochmah, and Binah is the Sharash HaGvuras, right? Binah, listening, has to do with Gevura. It's an intake, right? It's an intake as opposed to seeing, where the eyesight goes out to the world, like Rebbe Nachman says in a number of places, and then brings the picture back into the eyes. There's a real koyach or os has a kriya, right? There's a way that things can go out and impact the world. Gemara Nida, right? Seeing blood, right? Or being a Nida can cause certain maris that appear in other places. The hearing is completely feminine. It just goes into the ears, right? Binah is the aspect of Gevura. And so Hashem Shemati Shim'acha Yeresi. V'zeh, and this is also pshat in the Gemara in Tehillim, Giboyrei Koyach. Giboyrei Koyach is the bechina of Yira. Oisa Devarai, who are doing and committed to accomplishing the Ratzon of Hashem, Lishmaya Bekal Devarai. And immediately there's a reference, after speaking about Giboyrei Koyach, which is the bechina of Yira, there's going to be an aspect of Shemiah, because Shemiah is connected to Yira, to Gevura. Isa B'zar Kadosh Zachian L'mishma Kolin Mile'ela. And not only are they Zeiche Lishmaya Bekal Devarai, they're listening to God's voice, but they are actually privileged to hear voices from beyond. Says the Rebbe, voices from beyond, Gewalt. This is the Ra'amim. Through the Gevura of Giboyrei Koyach Oiseh Devarai, because V'ram Giburoisav mi is Bainan. Through that, Kal Ramcha B'Galgal, it's Bageba Ave Mitra, that causes the rain to fall down into the heart, and the heart is the aspect of a Pia Daber. Chochmah v'hagas libi tfunas lahafshit akmimia shebelev, and that causes a person to experience ra'amim. Na'yedezeh halev shamea. Then the heart starts to hear. V'ayin v'hagas libi tfunas. It impacts the heart and it cleans out the wrinkles of the heart. U'kamashikasav nasat al'avdecha lev shamea. You gave your servant a listening heart, because it's all tali on the shmiya, and the shmiya is tali on the yira, like we read, Hashem shemati shim'acha yaresi. When there's yira, so then shemati, then there's the bechina of shmiya. The gam dvarav nishma'u l'biryasa. And not only will the words impact you yourself, but they will actually be able to go out and impact other people. V'zeh l'shmaya B'kol Devarai. Other people will be hearing your kol. V'zeh b'chinas kol ha-shofar. This is the aspect, ultimately, there's no greater expression of kol that's similar to thunder than the shofar. Why? Because das shofar shal ayil eloi shel Yitzchak. This is the aspect of the shofar of the ayil that's a remembrance for Akedas Yitzchak. And that's one of the reasons that we're blowing shofar, to awaken that schus, right? To remember that Avraham Avinu was about to bring Yitzchak and he had to replace him last minute just because the Kodesh Baruch Hu stopped him. But ultimately, that's a bechina of zechus that's connected to Yitzchak. Yitzchak is Gevura, the Ra'am Gevuraisav mi is Binah. And what does the shofar produce? A tremendous call. Bechinas v'Ra'am Gevuraisav. V'zehu, says the Rebbe, that's pshat. Ashrei ha'am yoidei surah. Fortunate is the nation who knows the Trua. Says the Rebbe, what a strange thing to connect listening to shofar to Yodei Trua, right? It's like, what does it have to do with your thinking? But says the Rebbe, because it doesn't just go into your ears and stomach goes into your ears. It's meant to ride through the Shmiya and to impact your Galgalta, to impact your brain. That Pia Daber produces Chochmah, right? That is able to go ahead and to impact a person's thinking. And in so doing, we go back to that Zara Kodesh, that Kala nafik va'araba ave mitra, when the voice is heard and it impacts the ave mitra, which the Rebbe said is noizla min lavainan, is libuna de maichas, the white matter of the brain. Then ishtama kala briyasa v'da'inu ra'amin. Then it's able to be heard by other people. It's able to be heard by ourselves. It's able to v'hagis libitfunas. It's able to give ourselves v'nesat la'avdecha leiv shemea, the bechin of shemia, and that's l'shmaya b'kol shofar. When we hear the kol shofar, Asher Yoidei Surah, that the call of the shofar went into our ears and it impacted the bechina of Yoidei, of Yediyah. Yoidei Trua Sheyifka Akol B'moyach Bechinos Ave Mitra, and it's able to impact that part of the brain that is connected to the Ave Mitra, from which drips down, hopefully is going to drip down good, positive, holy thoughts of Yiras Shamayim down into the heart. And bechinas avi mitra, that's the aspect of rain that comes after thunder is heard. V'yeh bechinas or avi, and it will be the aspect of thunder. Then the Rebbe says an interesting thing over here. Umi sheshemeat ki hashofar meish yari v'chared. A person who is zocha to hear shofar from an ish yari v'chared, who's mamish blowing the shofar itself. That's the bechin of Gevura Yitzchak with Yiras Shamayim, with Gevura. Such a person will have no need to fear thunder. Will have no need to fear thunder. Now, for us, again, in our very sophisticated, adult human lives, at this point in human history, that we've grown up, so to speak, that we're big adults. So who should ever fear thunder? We know that thunder's harmless, right? But back then, they didn't quite know that thunder was harmless, and it was terrifying. It was mamish terrifying. Again, we've snuffed out all of the magic in nature. We've completely divested this world from all of its lights. We've destroyed the world in many ways. Mostly in here, not out there. That out there also. But the reason why we destroyed the world out there is because we've destroyed it in here. And we've oriented ourselves as separate from the world, which we're going to learn from, and therefore we think that we could just, shalom alai nafshi. No shalom alai nafshi. We're going to actually destroy the planet, and that's going to destroy us. But it starts in here because it all has to do with our thinking, which is very, very important. Says the Rebbe, a person who has already heard Tkiyah Shofar Mamish Mi'ish Yari V'chared, he won't need it, because the whole point of Ra'amim that's supposed to scare a person is lahav shetakmim shebalev. Says the Rebbe, a person who has mamish yiras shamayim, that you have no yiras chitzonius anymore, because the only reason that a person's going to experience the yiras chitzonius of thunder, so what are you afraid of? You're afraid you might die, right? It's not yiras shamayim, right? A person's afraid. You're afraid, it humbles you a little bit, your heart opens up, and then hopefully you can then have access to true Yiras Shamayim. Says the Rebbe, but a person who already has the Yiras Shamayim, because you already heard it from the Kol Shofar or producing Kol in your Tefillah, you're already childlike in your simplicity, so then the fear is not fear for your life, because your life is nothing more than a ray of the divine, that you're here as a Shliach of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Hashem Nasan Hashem Lakach. Like, I'm not afraid of death. What we are, though, is capable of appreciating nature with a childlike sense of wonder, mamish wonder, right? So that the emotion is completely flipped. It's not that I hear thunder and I'm terrified and I go running. I hear thunder and we just stand in awe, because we already have that channel cleared between the mind and the heart, where the heart is nasat la'avtcha, just lev shameh. Person's able to hear, wow, look at HaKadosh Baruch Hu, shekoicha, and make a bracha, right? Shekoicha gvurasai malay olam. It's his koyach, it's his gvura. It's a very childlike way of approaching it, as opposed to a calculating, scheming, sophisticated way, right? To calculate, what does this mean for me? A person won't respond to thunder in that way, because you've already cleared the channel, and you're living with tmimus uli yishrei leiv, simcha. Umisha shemeat ki hashofar mi'ish yari v'chared bevadai lo yidag kol hashanim amim. Such a person will not need to fear the thunder the whole year long. K'may shekasav b'kolos uvrakim aleim niglesa. You have appeared with kolos, with thunder, really in that context, thunder and brakim and lightning bolts. You've appeared to Am Yisrael, uv'kol shofar aleim haifata, and with the sound of the shofar, you appeared upon them. Shebekal hashofar hafia aleim mikailos uvrakim. Right? That aleim hafata, meaning HaKadosh Baruch Hu, you will protect them. Aleim hafata, right? You will appear above them as like a guardian to protect them with the kol shofar from kailos uvrakim. When kailos ubrakim aleim niglesa, when there are kailos and brakim and you are appearing to some other people who don't have such a pure heart, that you need to shake them up a little bit and cast them into fear, that they can then elevate into a holier fear, to the person who's already heard the kol shofar, kol shofar aleim hafata. Right, that call will protect them. They don't need to feel any fear. Instead, they will feel the childlike, simple tmimus of awe. Right, and that kesher of uli yishrei leiv, even simcha, a person comes to simcha. Ois dalid. Yeah, let's try if we can. Because some people just mentioned that as they listen to the recording. So if keep it very, very bekitzer if you can, and or afterwards we'll have a couple of minutes if that's okay. Yeah, but go bekitzer.
Hafia means protect also.
In this context, he's not saying it doesn't mean protect. Hafia means to appear, but he's saying in this context, hafia aleihem is like a protective energy, right? And that will protect. Yeah.
And just very briefly, he says it's the magic out of thunder and lightning. It's interesting that the world calamities that usually happen are not lightning and thunder. They are things which are less understood, like tsunamis and earthquakes and stuff like that, which it seems also make
Got an upgrade. Okay. Gewaltig. Ois dalid. Avol tzarech lefanis es hamoichem ichachmas chitzaynis umimachshavai zaris, but a person needs to clear their heart, their mind, says the Rebbe. It's not so simple, because we're talking now about that the kol should be ramcha begalgal, and then it's like so simple, and then it will impact the heart. Says the Rebbe, okay, yeah, our heart is closed up, but guess what? Your brain could also be closed up. And if the brain is closed up, no amount of thunder and no amount of kol and tefillah is going to impact a person. So the Rebbe says step one, really, is tzarech lefanis es hamoichin. A person needs to cleanse and purify their brain from external wisdoms, which we're going to discuss in a minute, and from foreign thoughts. What's this chachmas chitzonius? So in the Rebbe's time, science and other philosophical approaches were really largely reductionist materialist. Right, it was the beginning of the Haskalah, and even going all the way back to more the earlier philosophers, that are Aristotle, Plato, and so on, which are starting to give the world or human beings a way of approaching the world, which is much more human-centric, right? Which is much more, we are the beginning and end of all of nature and all of history. And ultimately this leads, like I mentioned earlier, to a very fragmented worldview with no underlying sense of coherence and unity. Because that's really what it is. Chitzonius means disunity. Pnimi, right, just like a ball, right? If you go to the outside, each point on the outside is a different point. You come closer to the pnimius, it's always one. So Am Yisrael, our philosophy is a philosophy theology, Yiddishkeit, of pnimius, where it's all about unification, unifying, which is Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, right? Echad, Ata Echad, Shimcha Echad, Umikamcha Yisrael, like the Maharal explains, Goy Echad Ba'aretz, right? Because you're Ata Echad, we're Echad, because our whole thing is Echad. And so, very much I believe that the Rebbe is warning us away from a person that is connecting to worldviews that are encouraging separateness and multiplicity. That was where science was heading in the Rebbe's day. That was where technology was heading in the Rebbe's day, and it caused for a tremendous sense of fragmentation. All of a sudden, communities no longer function as ecosystems, right? And everything fell apart, and it became about the individual. It became increasingly egocentric and fragmented. And like I mentioned today, science, which is ostensibly a Chochmah chitzonius, is some of the deepest pnimius HaTorah, in a certain sense. If a person reads, even a layman, I'm not a bucky in any of this at all, but I try to read on a layman's level of quantum mechanics and quantum physics, because now the arc has swung in the opposite direction, both from the standpoint of mental health, which also used to be an incredibly either materialist reductionist from the standpoint of of psychiatry, where everything is just, neurons in your brain. There's no other experience happening outside of you, and there's nothing deeper to reflect on from the standpoint that maybe there being a soul that needs certain things, that isn't getting certain things. It's all just chemistry, all right, chas v'shalom. Or from other standpoints that relate to a person's mamish nefesh of Hamas, Freud, low things and low attractions and desires and connections, but now things are swinging back, and people are really coming to recognize HaKadosh Baruch Hu dafka through the sciences, right? Whether the humanities, whether through, like we're saying, physics, quantum mechanics, mathematics. Everything is coming back to the infinite. Everything's coming back to spirituality. There's a remarkable revolution that's taking place, which only started after the Rebbe's time, even though it's all built on science. It's built on science. It's built on science. But there's an arc of wisdom that's coming back, that's connected to what the Zohar Kadosh said, that in the 600th year of the 6,000th millennia, which is roughly the years between 1740 and 1840, the Zohar Kadosh already predicted hundreds, thousands of years ago, that there's going to be an explosion of Chochmah Ilah and Chochmah Tata. There's going to be an explosion of rain, right? Mamash, what we're learning a little bit over here also, coming down from Shamayim, which is the explosion of Kabbalah, of Pnimius HaTorah, in all of its various forms, as well as authentic Chochmah Tata. And the Chochmah Tata is going to rise and rise and rise and rise, and the Chochmah Ilah is going to come down, 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 and in that sweet spot of the Hamoyin Am, becoming enlightened enough from the standpoint of pure, physical, like physics and the study of the natural world, as well as beginning to taste from the metaphysics of the heavenly world through Kabbalah Pnimis HaTorah. And these two things are going to interact. According to the Vilna Gaon, this is called the Har and Tachtas Har, right? There's the underbelly of Har Sinai, but it's Mamish Torah, and these two things interact in a messianic way, and we're Mamish experiencing that today. And so you have to be careful. We say Chachmas Chitzonius. You have to be clear on what Chachmas Chitzonius is. Aside from the fact that certainly to study a trade, or the Gemara speaks about it, the Tanya himself brings this, right? And we know that the Rambam and the Ramban and many of our Gedolim studied, again, what today in very purist, Breslov or Hasidish trends, it's like you can't look at anything that isn't Torah. And we have to be a little bit more clear on what Chachmas Chitzonius is. What kind of philosophy is it? What kind of science is it? Where is it bringing a person? What's the messages that it's leaving a person with? Is it being integrated back into Torah, or Chas v'Shalom as a person who's not rooted enough shesulim bebeis Hashem, so then it could be dangerous. But to a person who's mamish living with absolute clarity, so then on the contrary, there could be tremendous benefit and value in exploring the emerging sciences and integrating them. We need more voices like this. There are some phenomenal books that have already been written on the subject. If you're interested, particularly in the quantum mechanics interplay and interconnectivity with Kabbalah, there's a phenomenal book called, it's a very fancy title, but it's called Kabbalistic Panpsychism. Kabbalistic Panpsychism. It's a little bit complicated and a little bit very, very deep, but it's absolutely phenomenal. It's written by somebody called Dr. Hyman Shipper. He's a firm Jew in Montreal, I believe, and it's highly, highly encouraged. Or Moshe Schatz, as one of the foremost Mekubalim today, is doing tremendous work from the standpoint of showing the connections between the discoveries of quantum mechanics and Kabbalah. Rabbi Yitzchak Ginsburg, famously, right, from Chabad, Kfar Chabad, is always busy, bringing in mathematics and bringing in quantum science, and a lot is happening today in that realm, and it's only going to increase and increase and increase. These are very natural twins, and for the first time, not only are science and religion not in conflict, but actually the essence of religion, like the most non-rational parts of religion, which is Kabbalah, right, and the mystical core really of all traditions, right, which all comes forth from Kabbalah, which is the essence of Yiddishkeit, which is the essence of all the religions, which is Adam Rishon's religion, and so on, and the spitz of science, mathematics, and mamish, just what we can discover rigorously through experimentation. That's a result of technology, that's a result of science that enables us now to discover parts of the world that they didn't even know existed 80, 90, 100 years ago. These two things, the essence of religion and the essence of science, is mamish the same in ways that will absolutely shock you. Shock. A person knows a little bit Kabbalah and a little bit quantum mechanics, all of a sudden you go back to the Arizal and you're reading quantum mechanics. All of a sudden you're opening quantum mechanics and you're reading Ari. So you have to be careful. I don't want to chas v'shalom make it sound like Chochmah chitzonius means that you just stick your face in a Gemara and there's nothing else in the world. Chas v'shalom. It's not my personal hashkafa. I don't think that was Rebbe Nachman's hashkafa. We just have to clarify what this means, Chochmah chitzonius. So the Rebbe says we have to rid ourselves from a fragmented, reductionist, materialist, egotistical worldview. That for sure. And the taivas that result from that. Mechametz. From chametz, that a person shouldn't be machmitz, like chametz, right? It's puffed up. The Gemara tells us the Zar Kaddish, right? Sa'ar Shabi'isa is always a symbol for the Yitzhahara, because that leads to arrogance. That leads to koichava itzam yadi. That leads to, again, the Newtonian concept that if we can just figure out all the forces, because everything is just motion, everything is just matter, right? That's being pushed around by different forces. If we can figure those forces out, we can unravel the whole secret of the universe. There's no God. There's just matter. Chas v'shalom, right? That leads to a tremendously egocentric perspective, and that's chametz. Says the Rebbe, if our brain is chametzdik, and if we've already matured away from uli yishrei leiv simcha, from the childlike tmimus and pshitas, because all of humanity is just one kaimas adam, and in a certain sense it's like humanity grew up, right? Because in the earlier dairas, even not so very long ago, but even 200, 300 years ago, and certainly thousands upon thousands of years ago, when they lived radically different in their relationship to nature, they lived like children. Whether they were polytheistic, right, and they believed that all the different natural phenomena were results of other ethnic, or different polytheistic forces, chas v'shalom, or whether they were Am Yisrael, who brought to the world this concept of unity, but they believed that everything was a manifestation of the divine. And it's almost like now, as science has developed and as humanity has unfolded, now we've grown up. We're the adults, we're the big adults, and just like it usually is in the life of an individual, that even though on a certain level they grow up and they become much more mature and sophisticated, but in a certain sense they lose something that they had when they were children. There's a certain tmimus, there's a certain innocence, there's a certain sweetness, there's a certain joy that gets lost. And that's exactly what has happened to the meta-structure of humanity as we've grown up. And now it's like we're getting to a point in our human lives where there's room for humility. After you've walked this road all the way to the end and you found nothing, and it's like, oh, what am I going to do now? And a lot of us feel that way in our own personal lives, that after we're all big and grown up, I mentioned this Thursday night, and we feel very sophisticated and we look very accomplished and we still feel like absolute garbage, and then you have to wonder, what am I doing? What did I miss? Humanity missed something. They missed something super important, because we're all one organism. It's just one human being that matured, that grew up. And now, says the Rebbe, what are we going to do? Our kol ramcha of our own voice in tefillah is not going to be able to have the impact that it needs to have, kol ramcha begalgal, to produce libuna damaycha, flowing down to the heart, which is rain, to water our hearts, and to be mafshit, to remove from the heart the creases and the wrinkles that will enable me to feel real simcha in my mitzvahs, so that I can then know bein kodim gzar din la'achar gzar din, so I can then know whether I need to demonstrate or to put my tefillah in a maimer. Says the Rebbe, the only way to do that is by getting our brain rid of chametz. So that when my voice produces this thunder and it impacts the brain, then it's going to produce thunder. But when a person's brain is closed up in tumah, which again is just this arrogance, this impurity, this feeling of fragmentation, of being something independent of God, then it's meisem bam, like it says in the pasuk referring to achilas asurais, right? That forbidden foods are mitmeisem bam. You shall become impure. B'chazal say v'netamtem bam. You should become mitumtam. You should become closed up in them. As I ein kol nishma. Then it's not going to either work. So because you'll make the voice, but it won't be able to go into the brain, because the brain is stuck in tumah. Gam yishma yirasai. And also, says the Rebbe, another factor that we need to do is to guard our yira. Because that's really what gives the voice its power in the first place, that it should be able to impact. That a person shouldn't have external fear, and psychologically speaking, which is really spiritually speaking, in a very, very deep way, is just a mashal for the nimshal of the soul. These two things are intimately connected, because a person who has this sophisticated, scheming worldview, it really results, in a certain sense, from an existential fear of not being worthy enough, and needing to always constantly prove their worth, needing to always constantly, and it comes from a yira. It's a yira chitzainis, right? It's a constant sense of perception that I am not enough. That's the result of a disconnection from a self-identification with a spark of the divine that I think is so naive and childish that I've moved past that, and there is no God, and it's just me. And that leads to a tremendous existential sense of yira. And there's yira chitzainis that's a result of that. And everything that we do is trying to constantly fill that void and fill that lack. V'zeu ein chachma ein yira, says the Rebbe. Have it any way you like. The Mishnah says in Avos, start from chachma, that if you don't have chachma clear because it's chachma chitzainis, that's going to lead to yira chitzainis. Or in yira in chachma, it starts the other way also. If a person has yira chitzainis, that's going to lead chas v'shalom to them having chachma chitzainis. V'zeu, and this is pshat in the Gemara. It's also a Zar Kadosh, and here he brings two places in Shas that says that when Shlomo Malach married Bas Parai, Yarad Gavriel v'na'atz kana bayam. Gavriel, the Malach Gavriel descended, and he planted a reed in the middle of the Yam, and the Gemara says that collected lots of dust, it became an island, and that became Rome. But it started from Gavriel, not Kana Bayam. Says the Rebbe, what's the depth of that? Pirish, what that means is, Me'eshtalshelis ha'gevurais hanu yirach chitzainis, na'atz Kana Biyam ha'chachma. Gavriel is Gevura, right? Shmakeinu, Malach Gavriel, Gavriel. And from the shtalshelis of Gevurais that is improper, Yirach chitzainis, na'atz kana b'yam ha'chachma. There's a na'atz kana. There's something that's planted in the yam ha'chachma, which is the galgalta d'moicha, the libuna d'moicha, because yirach chitzainis im ein yira ein chachma. Yam is the ocean. In this context, it means the yam ha'chachma, right? Which is yud mem is 50, right? And the sharish of the 50 sha'irim of Binah is in chachma, right? Chachma is also called yam. Yam is 50, but really there are 50 gates of Binah, but it emerges from chachma, and so it's called the yam ha'chachma. What's a kana? Kana means a reed, but kana, like we already learned in Likutei Moharan earlier, the bechinas kol hayotzim kana. This is the voice. Na'at kana b'yam ha'chachma. Hainu alidei shtalshelos ha'gevurais. Because of the hishtalshelos ha'gevura shebechinas usifa dedahava, this is called the dregs of gold. Gold is gevura, silver is chesed, and the dregs of gold, which is the Malach Gavriel coming down into this world, that's a mashal for the hishtalshelos of gevura, from yira, from holy yira into yira chitzainis. When that happens, Yorad Gavriel, when Gevura has a yirida, right? Yorad Gavriel, when it becomes yira chitzainis, na'atz b'yam ha'chachma. I'm skipping one. Na'atz b'yam ha'chachma. The person's chachma becomes closed up, and because of a kaneh. The voice is incapable of being heard. Kaneh de bechinas kol hayotzim ha'kaneh. It means a reed, but it could also mean the esophagus, which is why a reed is called a reed, by the way, because it's hollow, right? Like the esophagus, the same thing. This is the reed of our body. It's a kaneh. When gold, which is gevura, is yarad, it's the dregs, it's the impurities of gold. Yarad Gavriel, yirach chitzainis, nishar hakol na'ut ba'atimas hasecha v'lo yishtamel lebriyasa. The kana is na'ut b'yam ha'chachma. It will get stuck. It will stay in the brain. It's incapable of producing any kind of voice that's going to impact the heart because the brain is stuck. The ikar is lishmar ma'ichay shalayachmet, so we cannot make our mind into chametz. V'zehu gar chayas kana. All the wild animals of the kana, of the reeds, of the forest, gar chayas kana. Please be megar, yell at them, scream at them, force them away. Kedi isa b'zayar, says the Zar Kadosh, kana ches tishaber. Take the letter ches of the word chametz and the chametz, the ches, has a kana. It has a reed, right? Because if you look on the left side of the ches, it has a leg that's coming down. That's called the kana of the ches. Tishaber. Gar chayas kana, meaning break the kana of the ches, because chayas is the letter ches. So gar chayas kana, v'tasa mimenu hey. What's going to happen when you break that left leg of the ches? You make a break in it, it will cause it to turn into the letter hey, and that takes tasa mi oisios chametz, the chimutz, the putrefaction, right, of the brain, that aspect of the rising process that causes a sense of ego. Break that leg of the ches, turn it into a hey. Chametz turns into matzah. Hainu shaloi tachmitz chachmascha, that a person should make sure not to be tachmitz their chachma by connecting chas v'shalom to philosophies that are going to cause a person to push Hashem out of his life, to cause us to think about the world as a fragmented universe without any underlying coherence. A person should be connected to chachmas penimis, whether the chachmas Torah or lahavdil the chachmas penimis of the chitzonis, but it's not chitzonis because it's also chachmas Torah, it's also chachmas penimis, tach the sahar. But the main thing, a person should stay away from philosophies of tuma and of hopelessness and of despair and of cynicism and skepticism. All of this that's mamish chachmas chitzaynis. A person shouldn't touch that, right? But the chachmas from the umas ha'olam, chachma b'gayin tamin, that are part and parcel of our worldview of achdos, adarabba. But a person should stay away from chametz, and a person should transform the chametz into matzah by breaking that kana that's stuck in the yama chachma from Yarad Gavriel, from the Yerid of Gevuras, and it turns chametz into the word matzah. But as Hashem will return tomorrow to continue this admittedly very terse paragraph. There's a lot of information. Try if you can to look it over before tomorrow's shir. Thank you so much for joining everybody on the call. Everybody who's watching this. מלך חי וקיים על כל נשימה שאני